Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Kazim Saeed. I'm very glad that Pakistan Business Council has given twice the average time of all the other sessions to agriculture and twice the number of speakers as well. And I hope we will keep you entertained through the next about hour and a half. And thank you for your presence. Thanks to all the distinguished speakers on the stage. I'll just say a couple of things to start with, and then we start the discussion. Number one, that this is a sort of moment of time in the agriculture sector, which has been dominated by government in Pakistan for about 6 decades now. And the indication of that I think is most powerful is the decision first by the government of Punjab and then by the federal government. I believe the government of Sindh is also leaning in this direction of discontinuing their procurement of wheat, which has been on for about 6 decades. And I think there's a lot of question about whether this will actually continue through the coming years. My own sense is that the real driver behind that was the immense cost of running that operation. I think neared something in the range of $500 million just in markup for the purchase of the commodity and on sale. And that's something that I think that drove that decision. So probably that decision will stick. And that's what we seem to be hearing, which creates an enormous opportunity for the private sector to come in and do some of this work. I happen to hold the opinion that wheat operation of the government was one of the key hurdles to growth in the agriculture sector, and especially through private sector. And hopefully we'll see a lot more participation of the private sector, because you can't run that operation without private players for warehousing, for testing services, for value addition once the wheat is taken care of in good quality. So I wanted to just home in on that one example. Now there are, as I say, there is opportunity for private sector to come in. Well, you're going to need different business models. You can't have a government-dominated business model where private sector flourishes. So, and that's the purpose, that's where the purpose of this session comes out. Because there are a number of companies represented on the stage here, and as well as others out there, who have taken that step ahead of government deciding to get out of the way in the agriculture sector. That process is on. Many companies have seen the opportunities in agriculture and started taking some risks, building some new business models, trying them out. And the thing is, and we'll hear about that today, and our goal is to make sure that you as folks who are interested in agriculture but want to know where to enter, how to enter, or if you're already there, how are others faring, this is what we want to deliver to you today in some detail. Now, when you're building business models, generally you figure there's building blocks that are out there, and you rearrange the building blocks in a way and try to come up with a new business model. So for Amazon, just take one example, Jeff Bezos did not have to create a courier company. The US Postal Service was already there. Bezos did not have to create the internet. I mean, the internet was there. So, or payments gateway, the settlement PayPal was already there. So clearly there is an immense creativity that went in there, but the building blocks were there. What you find in the agriculture sector of Pakistan, the building blocks sometimes are not there, and you are sitting building the building blocks. And that's why we have some of the heavy hitters of the industry, and from Government General Sahab is representing the entire corpus of government here. You need such players to come in and figure out, apply that expertise of building new business models, but also have the ability to take some risk and see. And if it's because they have their own business interest in that new business model, that's when it will stick and it has a chance to scale. So you'll see on the stage you have folks from the financial sector, and including insurance, which is usually not the case in agriculture. You will see Yawar Saab, who has so much depth on the dairy side, and which is clearly a critical sector for growth, and Abrar Saab with so much from National Foods, so much depth on the horticulture, fruits and vegetables, and Dr. Zeelaf Munir, of course. English Biscuit is one of the largest buyers of wheat in the country, and there's a lot of prospect there as well. So I will try to do 2 passes, One is to just ask each member of the on the panel, what was that problem they were trying to solve in agriculture, and how does that ideation go? And in the second pass, we will try to focus on what were the challenges and how far along they are on what they try to do, and then we'll try to come to some questions and answers. But before we start, I'd like to request, I think Dr. Zeelaf Munir, being Vice Chair of Pakistan Business Council, is in a way is our host on that from this panel. So I'd just like to request her to just place this prospect in perspective. Agriculture is a prospective sector. We talk about so many possibilities, and some people say this sector will salvage our economy, and the business sector is looking to agriculture with great interest. Government is focusing on agriculture. So Dr. Zeelaf, if you could just set the stage for us a little bit.
Thank you so much, Kazim. Agriculture got mankind out of Stone Age. So I believe there is no reason why agriculture cannot transform the economy of Pakistan. The potential of agriculture, the excellent potential it has, is in the very few sectors that, and at a global level, that can convert Pakistan from an importer to an exporter. Having said that, we are all here, have been here for 2 very meaningful days of a dialogue on economy, and hence I'll keep my perspective broad and try to speak on 3 of the areas that I think would be relevant to all that we have been talking about over the past 2 days. So the number 1 would be the effect on the economy. Number 2 would be the people of Pakistan and that effect on the economy. And number 3 would be the economic strategy. All of those related to agriculture. So when we talk about the economy, we generally hear, or at least what we see is 20 to 25% of GDP if we look at economic survey of Pakistan, but is generally believed that if we include indirect effect, it's around 44% of the GDP of Pakistan, making it very, very significant. Now, when we look at 75% of our exports are related to agriculture. When we look at the SIFC has set priorities and ambitions, which also gives us an indication of the direction the government is looking at. The priority sectors are agriculture, mining, and IT. So if I compare agriculture to, say, mining, again, both of those sectors can certainly be leapfrogging Pakistan's economy. But mining requires immense investment and is a long-term investment. Where I look at IT requires human capital, and for its sustainability, it requires a pipeline of people coming from the educational institutions to be supporting it, and the economy is related to the college graduate and university graduate youth. So in that aspect, agriculture actually has the most upside to what can be achieved in terms of increasing the output with the least amount of investment involved, and an upside on the GDP. We already have huge investments in agriculture. We are blessed with arable land. We have water if we don't keep wasting it the way that we do. We have human resources, we have the institutions, and if I look at the farmers, they are also all of our small, medium, micro entrepreneurs. So that's how I would look at the effect of agriculture. And then I think, being just, as you mentioned, more close to my heart, say wheat. If I compare the multiples of wheat to when I export my cookies, it's a good 4 to 6 multiples if I compare to wheat. And yet, if I look even deeper, or if industry looks any deeper, if there is deep manufacturing, if we are to be converting it into lysine or glutamic acid, the multiples would be much, much higher. So that's the kind of vision I think that the industry needs to be looking at. The key to unlocking any of this potential is the corporate and the financial sector. The second was the people of Pakistan. So 37% of our labor force is employed in agriculture. If we look at mining, just because of the geological requirements, it is not in areas where it would be creating employments in other industries. And if we look at IT, again, it is the urban centers with internet connectivity, when we have it, that it's going to be the pipeline for that, and also what comes out of it. So where agriculture is concerned, it is the rural population, and hence it eradicates hunger and poverty at the same time as employing people. Thirdly, when we talk about what strategy should we be employing to be able to untap all of this potential. So as I mentioned earlier, so we are very happy to have General Sahab here from SIFC with great ambitions for what can be done in agriculture, the Pakistan Agriculture Council and the PBC, which EBM is a member of both, have done immense research and taken out a very, very comprehensive report with the recommendations of how the industry is highlighting what the industry is doing. All of my notable fellow panelists here will be talking a lot about it, and with the recommendations that can help the scale. So having a strategy of collaboration between the public and the private sector, I think would be the way to go. And if I may add, as you started with your comments, I think if agriculture can be transformed from a political economy to one of where it is an entrepreneurial space for all of our entrepreneurs and industry, it would have huge potential.
Thank you. That's great direction to start us off, Dr. Zeelaf. Thank you very much. I will just, I think, link some of what you said to something that's very important in agriculture. Generally, people think of the crops as agriculture. Now, that's not the way farmers see it. For farmers, the crops and the livestock are part of the same system. And this is also true for corporate farmers, by the way, and we can have discussion about that. And I think Saeed Yawar Saab has deep experience on that livestock side of the equation. I think the key question is, Yawar Saab, there are many issues to solve in the dairy sector. What is sort of one issue that you feel there has been a great deal of focus on? And if we can just talk about the issue first, and if you can lay that out for us, and then second pass will come to what was done about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kazim Saab, and Dr. Zeelaf has, I think, done the ground setting for it. I have a presentation, I think it's on that side. The real issue is genetics. And if you look at that chart, this was done by Dr. Sajjad. He is one of the leading veterinarians in the country. In 1920, the American cow, which was the Friesland, and the Pakistani cow, which was Sahiwal, both produced 2,000 liters of milk in a year. That means about 5 liters a day. In over the 100 years, they have gone from 5 liters to 35 liters, and we are still at 5 liters. And that is the key issue. I think Khalil Saab is sitting here. He will tell you that how the poultry has developed through better genetics. Basically, it is your feed to milk ratio, and it is your feed to the meat ratio. This is where we have lagged behind. Now, we had an issue. We started with small farmers, 5 liters a day, and we built a system of village milk collection, and we went up to 150,000 farmers from whom we were collecting milk. Then they came to us and said, "Okay, you're doing everything, improve our breed." So we then set up a training program to produce veterinarians, gave them equipment, and made them go to the farmers to do artificial insemination to improve their breed. Then I got the idea to go to USAID, and I said, and in those days USAID had a lot of money, and I said, we have a small program going on, we'd like to scale it up. So they said, bring us a proposal, which we did. And in that proposal, we trained 2,000 artificial inseminators, gave them a CD70 Honda motorbike, we gave them equipment and semen, and they became entrepreneurs on their own. At the same time, we trained about 5,000 women para-veterinarians who could go to the villages, and with sick cows, they could do basic treatments. They were nurses to the animals. And then we trained about 10,000 farmers, because we had a training farm in Pattoki. And so we would bring people there and train them. They would live there, they would work there. And a very interesting story is that one of the women, livestock workers, the USAID rep came, and she knew Urdu as well. She asked this lady that, didn't you get opposition from your in-laws or your parents? She said, I did. But when I treated my father-in-law's buffalo and the buffalo recovered, my stock went up. So the next one was, because we then put up a very large plant, one of the biggest that Nestlé has in Khanewar, about 1 million liters of milk a day. And for that we realized that the local milk is not sufficient, and any cow that produces under 20 liters of milk is not viable, doesn't make money. And if you have to do it as a business, it has to produce more than 20 liters. So we started importing cows from Australia. The first shipment was about 2,000 cows. Some of it went to Jahangir Tareen. The textile business was doing very well. So most of it went to Dada Boys and Sapphires and Mia Mancha. So they actually set up large dairy farms, which they were doing it as a business to make money. And then the commercial dairy farming came in. So we have about 15 large commercial farms, which are between, I would say, about 3,000 to 7,000 cows, producing milk of good quality, high quality, and that is milk that we can even export, make the best kind of products. And this is the journey we have been through. Thank you.
Thank you, Yawar Saab. The power of a corporate player like Nestlé, I think it merits mention that if you look across Pakistan's agriculture sector and where you find excellence in agriculture, you're going to find there's a handful of examples. You're going to find a leading corporate that has done that backward integration and worked with farmers, brought them good seed, etc. And whether it's the example of Nestlé in dairy or you can see others as well. I think this is something that a journey that National Foods has started on in recent years, and Abrar Hasan Saab has been actually spearheading it himself. So Abrar Saab, if you could talk about your journey in this work, especially the work on tomato.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, and thank you very much, Kazim, for this nice introduction. I think Zeelaf did a very nice job in sort of laying the premise. I think one of the key things about investments that you actually learn as you progress through your career, it's all about demographics, demographics, and demographics. So if the demography is right, actually it's ripe for investment. Pakistan is a country which is blessed with the right kind of demographics, obviously with a younger population. But from an agricultural perspective, I think one of the key things to note is that 65% of Pakistan's population is a rural-based economy. And when you look at the quality of the population within the rural segment, you are going to find people at the bottom of the pyramid. People actually who have malnutrition, people who are extremely poor, and people actually who struggle on a day-to-day basis to actually make a qualitative living for themselves. So obviously the basic needs which are required from a population perspective are not being met because industrialization actually is not very viable in the rural sector because access to utilities which are the key inputs which are required to foster an industry actually is just not available. The only key thing which is left is actually agriculture. Now, we actually got into this investment space by mistake, and I'll share that with you. It's an interesting sort of journey. But I would also like to highlight that the current agricultural practices that we actually have in Pakistan, they are very primitive. Primitive in the sense that they're not focused on any kind of value addition, which a converter like us, we're in the business of conversion. We buy agricultural material and we convert it into food products. And of course, then we are blessed that we've got the entire value chain in front of us, right up to the retail sector, where we convert it, we pack it, we brand it, we market it, and then of course we also export it. In this journey, we realized that when you compete on a global scale, unfortunately, coming from a third world country, we are subjected to huge kinds of non-tariff barriers. And these non-tariff barriers come in the shape of very insane kinds of regulations which restrict you or sort of challenge you in terms of your technical capabilities to actually meet them. So while we were actually struggling with this particular aspect of meeting these regulations and the challenges of accessing value-added markets, we were faced then with a crisis about 2 years ago when the economy took a dip. And all of a sudden there were capital controls and we were not able to actually open LCs. And certain items that we were actually buying from countries like China or other aspects of import related goods that we were using, we were suddenly faced with an existential threat. All of a sudden we couldn't open LCs and we didn't actually have access to these raw materials. Pakistan in itself was producing these raw materials, but they were very cyclical. The yields were very erratic. The pricing was not very consistent. So for a converter like us, price consistency is actually extremely important. So one such example actually was tomato paste, which we were actually sourcing from China. We were very lucky that we could clearly see post-COVID the challenges, the supply chain challenges that were emerging on the horizon. And then coupled with how the Pakistani economy took a dip, we made a sort of like an insane call actually where we imported the entire year's quantity of tomato paste from China. Now, any leader who was actually running a organization, especially a listed company, to invest this heavily in any kind of stock level, probably they would get fired because it just completely disturbs your working capital. But this was an existential threat where we actually had to take this kind of a chance. But it made me realize that, while it's okay, while we've covered up 1 year, but there is, what guarantee is there that if this thing happens on a recurring basis, how will I actually continue to do business? So while there is an existential threat as well, but the challenge of exporting on top of that actually becomes extremely difficult because how do you actually control the quality standards? That is something presently when we buy from the local market, we actually have to go through middlemen. There's not much vertical integration that has taken place for industries to actually capitalize on that market. So that's how we accidentally actually sort of got into the farming concept where we actually went on an experimental basis where we said, okay, we will try to grow the tomatoes ourselves. We'll take up this challenge. And we will see that if we can meet the quality standards, which is good enough to export as well on a continuous basis, on a sustainable basis. So what we did actually was that we studied the entire value chain, actually all the way from retail or even from an export perspective, let's say the buyer and his standards of the finished products, and we actually worked backwards all the way down to the seed level. So we dissected the entire value chain. At each particular step, we sort of noted down what was the cost. We included a margin for all the stakeholders who would be participating in the value chain, and then ultimately came down to the seed level, which is right down to the grassroots, where we actually had to work with seed companies to ensure that they understood the specifications of the end product and the challenge of how that needed to be met. So this was the methodology actually that we followed. I'm not going to get into explicit details because I believe there are other panelists over here who can share the experiences. But, you know, when you structure a project properly, I just want to share the end results actually of what happened. Pakistan typically produces or grows tomatoes where the yield of tomatoes on average is about 15 tons per acre, right? But if you actually break it down on a 5-year average, you will see that majority of the years there are tomatoes where the crop is completely destroyed, or sometimes the crop is there. So when you average it out on a 5-year basis, the average even goes down below 15, and you know we're looking at a figure of about 9 tons per acre. When we actually deconstructed and built this value chain where everybody actually made a profit and we actually had a fixed margin, we provided the inputs through farm management companies and we aggregated land. We did not buy land, but we aggregated farmers and the lands. And we conducted this experiment. We were able to get an average of about 24 tons per acre, right? And so when we got 24 tons per acre, this is average I'm talking about. In the maximum range, we actually even achieved an output of 42 tons per acre on this thing. So what I'm trying to actually tell you is that if you study the value chain and you structure it and you use the right kind of technology, the people who were identified as stakeholders within that, we used drones, we used satellites, we used proper water management techniques. We used the right kind of seed partners actually over here who understood the specifications. It becomes, reasonably viable actually to beat these kind of parameters and compete on the international standards. So, this working that we did, actually it translated to about, the whole idea was obviously we were buying Chinese tomato paste, so we had to take those tomatoes, convert that into paste, and then compare the paste-to-paste comparison actually between China and Pakistan. I'm happy to report that the first experiment that we did, we beat Chinese tomato paste landed cost in our factory by $400 per ton actually. So we actually beat China. So that is
all by mistake.
So this is something actually which was very pleasant. It gave me the motivation to actually then diversify and look into other crops. And this year we're actually not only carrying on with further tomato plantations, but now we've actually also started experimenting with red chilies, which is a huge challenge because red chili on a global international scale faces a lot of microbial contamination challenges. And this is where the regulatory standards are so hard, we are not able to export in the desired quantities that we would like. I'd like to quickly share an example. In 1980s to be exact, we were developed as a vendor by McCormick Spices, who are the world's largest spice manufacturers and producers. They came to Pakistan to source specifically a chili called Dandikat. Dandikat actually is a brilliant chili because it has a medium heat profile, and anybody who loves cooking, they will note that, whenever you use pepper with a medium heat profile, it brings flavor out actually, rather than adding heat component. So Dandikat chili was the most favored chili actually, even by developed markets actually, because they would regularly use it as a blend in their recipe development that they had. We unfortunately lost all that market, and there was a time where we were exporting 100 containers per season just for McCormick of red pepper, and we lost it all because of not being able to meet the regulatory standards. Number two, erratic crop yields, infestation actually. Sometimes the flood would destroy the crop, and then eventually the Americans, they took the investment to India and they set up a plant actually over there, and Pakistan was completely wiped out. Today, Dandikat chili it's not even being grown in Pakistan because it's been wiped out. It's been replaced by hybrid. So we lost a jewel actually because there was no knowledge base actually available at that time, which could foster or sustain this kind of activity.
So since you've mentioned floods, Abrar Sahab, if I may just also take in opinion from Amin, because these kinds of perils, many of them that affect farmers are about climate, and a handful of them have to do with pest and disease, which also hit the Nandikat a great deal. So we can't stop the the directions of climate change globally. Pakistan is not the kind of economy that can make a decisive impact there. But what we must do is protect our farmers from the impacts of climate change perils. And that's where, if you could talk about how you've tried to address that and support the farmers.
Thank you, Kazim. Thank you for PSC for giving us an opportunity. So I think what of the panelists have talked about, and I think some things have become very visible, is that whenever you're trying to solve a problem, it's not one individual or one entity or one business which is doing it. It's an ecosystem play. When you look at agriculture, whether it's the cattle side or the crop side, or for that matter, textile, it's about the system that you develop, and insurance is essentially a risk mitigation tool whereby we basically look at two things mathematically and try to kind of predict the financial impact and mitigate the financial impact of that. One is acts of God, the other is mishaps of man. So these are unpredictable events which you have not quantified or you cannot predict with great accuracy, and you bring in a financial protection. So I think when we're talking about climate change, we've talked about it at length at this conference as well in terms of how the climate patterns are changing, where floods are coming in, which are unanticipated, unprojected in terms of impact. There is a solution for it, which the world uses, and unfortunately we don't, particularly from an agricultural context. If you look at the contribution that agriculture has directly and indirectly, it's a pretty large segment of your total GDP. But we are in many ways, to use a word that some of the panelists have used, primitive in terms of how we manage those risks. The insurance industry has a lot of examples of other countries in the world, particularly African countries, which have also used agriculture as a mainstay and to develop their economies and to kind of get into the ecosystems. I think unfortunately, the reality check is we are far behind them as well. We work with a company called Pula, which is an agri-tech. It works in 22 countries, particularly in Africa. And in many ways, some of the solutions that we find are normal, be it in Bangladesh, who can anticipate and prepare and provide financial protection for floods, to India, which is very evolved from an agriculture perspective. Lots of learnings that have not translated, unfortunately. But we're trying to make an effort. The industry is trying. We are typically not the first wave, we are the second wave. So we have to work with players like National Foods, with the banks sitting here, Bank of Punjab and HBL in particular have been very visionary. And the idea is to create and support an ecosystem which allows you to create impact, financial impact of what the businesses that you are trying to develop. So in short, to answer the question that Kazim asked me to do, there are solutions available which we can very quickly implement. We've taken the lead in doing something called area yield, which is moving ahead from the current infrastructure support that is available for farmers, particularly people who borrow, to not only just insure the segment of the crop, but to link it to the yields, where we are protecting and giving them a protection above a certain threshold, that if the yield drops for whatever reasons, and those reasons can be, some things can be a whitefly attack, it can be a heat wave, it can be a flood, all of those risks up. There's a financial mitigation available for. I think picking basically a leaf from Yawar Saab's thing, we're also working on the livestock side. And, there's such a lot of innovative products. There was one product that was recently shown to us where insurers are providing an insurance financial guarantee that if the temperature goes up of a certain threshold, it will automatically trigger a payout because the yield of the cow developing milk, producing milk goes down. So all of these products are available, but we cannot do this alone. We have to be part of the ecosystem, and that's where progressive people like National Foods and the banks are key to get this knowledge and this expertise out there. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you. I think last two speakers have mentioned, existential threat or catastrophic perils. And I just wanted to segue a little bit to the outlook from the financial sector. I know recent conversation, Nassir, we were having, you were talking about how now the banking industry has to shift to the real economy, and otherwise there's some existential threats there as well. So if you can just put that in perspective from the banking industry's perspective, how you look at agriculture and some of the issues you've been trying to address.
So thank you, Asad, for that. I was just trying to rack my brains on the first one, which is, what was the problem you're trying to solve? So I think I'll answer that as well in terms of, getting to the real economy. But I'd like to give you a sense of the journey HPL as one of the banks, commercial banks that actually started to look at this. Why did we actually start to look at it when no other bank was looking at it with that level of detail? And that goes back to one of our logos is we are more than a bank. There are three pillars that HPL works towards. One is positively shaping Pakistan's economy. And from that perspective, Zeelaf also mentioned a number of 44%, 20% base, value added, then you add livestock. So basically, this is such a vital segment of Pakistan's economy that we can't ignore it. The second reason why this is vital to Pakistan's economy is if we're going to increase value-added exports, how is that going to happen when we are in episodic flood burst cycles, just like economy goes boom and bust, agri gets impacted every time there is a flood, right? So Zeelaf also mentioned about water conservation, but it is also about creating dams, and if big dams, mega dams, hydropower dams take a long time to build, at least the microfinance institutions at the village levels, at the small levels, should be building small reservoirs that can, in a flood situation, a rainy season, take some of the pressure off. We're able to put that there. That would be positively shaping Pakistan's economy. We haven't started that yet, but we've discussed this, and I think this is one of the things that we need to take, because Amin and insurance can only do so much. It is about compensating the farmer for the damage done, but the damage is done. So if the supply chain on which we are relying for exports gets impacted, then what will we produce and what will we sell? Second is domestic consumption. Somebody mentioned every 3 years we add the population of Sri Lanka. And that, if my example used to be, every 1 year we add 2 Qatars to Pakistan's population. So that, I think, is a longer term that we also need to look at. All ties with Pakistan's economy, that's the first one. The second for HPL is really regional relevance. So we have 10 international locations ranging from China till UK. And with that, that gives us a window into the latest agri techniques, the latest developments taking place, particularly in China. What we have done is we've signed a strategic alliance with one of their leading agri banks, so that from a knowledge transfer, what's the best equipment, what's the best methodology. Yawar Saab mentioned about livestock research, what's happening in China around that. But more importantly, they're looking to create healthier crops that you can sow and you can harvest faster. So we need to keep an eye on what is also being developed and see what is amenable to bring in Pakistan. In addition to HPL's international locations, we have a group bank, Diamond Trust Bank, which is in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Burundi. I was last week actually in Kenya, and as you know, Kenya is one of the large exporters of tea. What was a surprise to me when I went to the Kenyan Tea Board was, and this is the real economy, this is their primary export, but tea was not indigenous to Kenya. In 1900s, early 1902, is when the first plantation was established. And just the Kenya Tea Board has 68 factories in those various plantations. And the best part is the real world today, which will change with when we listen to General Saab in terms of the plans and some of the corporate farming pieces that Abrar has talked about. But in the real world, most of our farmers, their land holdings are less than 12.5 acres, right? So the real world problems to solve is how to reach all of them, how can you get them mechanization, and yet have enough contiguous land to be able to run all of that in a modern and efficient manner. So the regional relevance is, while we look inward into Pakistan, we should certainly be looking at, best case examples. And in Kenya, there's a company called Fakuken that does hand-picked string beans. They make 3x, 4x more margin at the supermarkets in Europe than a regular string bean. So how can we do that value addition? I think looking at those successful use cases is going to be important for us in Pakistan, all of us. I don't believe this is anymore just an HBL agenda. I think this is a national agenda. That's why we're discussing it. So we should share it so that all banks participate, the best, and everybody brings various innovations so that we can really select and strengthen Pakistan, which is the objective. The third is sustainability. Whatever we do has to be sustainable. So I mentioned some existential threats that we need to collectively work and solve for. But in addition, we cannot have the people in the middle of this chain take away most of the margin so that the small farmers remain in perpetual poverty. Whatever we do also has to better their lives. It has to improve the output, it has to improve the yield, but it also has to better their lives. And those are, I would say the three priorities that we all should consider looking at, and seeing whether they make sense for, the various players, in this space. But until and unless, the flooding and all of those issues get resolved, what TPL is doing, I think, is fantastic, because the government crop insurance is a very limited amount, and there are a lot of requirements that we need to look at. So I think on that one, Nassir, we need to simplify. The last piece is storage. And I think Asad briefly talked about it. That is again something we need to solve for. As SOEs are being privatized, we need to see where PASCO is going to go, where TCP is going to go, and that creates space for private partners to come in. We already have accreditation services where we already have Nemat collateral as a structure set up, and we should certainly look at how, because in modern agri-based economies, these mechanisms play a very important role, to Abrar's point, in terms of smoothening, the flow of the crop, preservation of the quality of the crop for up to 6 months, and being able to give the farmers a fair pricing. They're not forced to sell for cash, when the crop is being reaped, because at that moment, because of the supply, the prices are at a minimum, right? So I think we do need to look at these various elements. If there is a next round, I can tell how we solve for them, but I would leave that with, some of what I see as the problem statements, not just for HPL, but for all of us together. And clearly, corporate farming, in most societies, I lived in US for 11 years, and if you go to the agricultural heartland, which is the Bible Belt, so-called, you just see endless flatlands and just fields and fields. So until and unless, there is a balance where we take, our existing small farmers along with us, and we start to innovate and develop new areas to explore. And I think Jan Saab is going to share with us a lot more on that. So I'm going to pass this back, Asad, to you.
Thank you, Nassir. I think that I'm glad that you've done two things in what you said. You've given a sort of systems sort of approach, looking at the entire value chain, not just one piece of it. And also, like Abrar Saab and Dr. Zeelaf earlier, you've talked about the small farmer, and it's not because we have to focus on the small farmer. That's the only one. Just to put it in perspective. There's 88% of the farms in the country, by number at last count, are with farmers less than 12.5 acres, but they cultivate 55% of the acreage of the country. So there are other farmers as well, but if we don't focus on the smaller farmers, they're producing half the output practically, we're not going to quite make it. And there, I think the role of government comes in, role of new structures and ecosystems comes in. And before going to Zafar and then General Saab on those topics, I just wanted to say to all of you here, we've gone through one round and you've got some idea of what each of the players is doing, and in a couple more, you'll have an idea of what everybody on the panel is doing. After Zafar and General Saab, I'm just going to ask all of you to just ask a handful of questions, so that, and please feel free to challenge the speakers as well if you feel. They're not all from government, but it's better to...
We can be as bad as governments.
Sure. But collect some questions that we can also seed into the second pass that we go through. Because hota ye ke as people talk, question answer ka time khatam ho jata hai. But let's make sure they're not speeches, they're questions. I know you guys will take care of that. Now, coming back to the question of small farmers, there is, Zafar, you have tried to focus from Bank of Punjab on what can be an ecosystem to get to them, rather than just, okay, subsidy de di or political objectives complete, okay. So if you can talk about that a little bit and the Kisan card, thank you.
जी, थैंक यू काजिम, बहुत शुक्रिया ये पीबीसी का। पहले तो मैं कोशिश करता हूँ कि फोकस तरीके से जो रियल प्रॉब्लम्स हैं जो हमने कन्फ्रंट की हैं, और मेरे ख्याल से वो बहुत ज़रूरी हैं शेयर करना सबके साथ, तो फिर मैं बात करूँगा किस तरह हमने उनको एड्रेस करने की कोशिश की है। अगर आप अलाउ करेंगे तो मैं इसी ब्रेथ में वो एक्सप्लेन कर दूंगा, अदरवाइज ओके। सो जो एक तो एग्रीकल्चर को हमें समझना, ज़ीलफ ने भी शुरू में कहा, इसको आइसोलेशन में आप मत देखें एज एन इकोनॉमिक इशू अलोन। इट्स एन इकोनॉमिक, सोशल एंड कल्चरल इशू। और जो प्रॉब्लम्स हैं वो भी इन्हीं 3 कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसीज में आपको नजर आएंगे। सो स्टार्टिंग फ्रॉम फॉर एग्जांपल डॉक्यूमेंटेशन, द लैक ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंटेशन। वो मैं एक बड़े दिनों से कोशिश कर रहा हूँ एक आर्टिकल लिखने की ऑन fountainhead and pond analogy, whereby the fountainhead being the fiscal side and the implication of that on the economy on the pond. The classic example is that because of the lack of documentation, because this sector not being part of the taxation regime, there is a gap of banks to fund this. देखिए, बैंकिंग 101 ये है कि, और मैंने और नासिर ने हमेशा ये पढ़ा और हमारे जहनों में इंग्रेंड हुआ और हम प्रैक्टिस भी करते हैं कि बैंक्स डील इन डॉक्यूमेंट्स नॉट इन गुड्स। सो ये हमारा काम डॉक्यूमेंटेशन तक है, और अगर डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ही अवेलेबल नहीं है बेसिक, तो फिर हमारे लिए बड़ी दिक्कत हो जाती है टू हैंडल दोज इशूज। तो द फर्स्ट एंड द फोरमोस्ट गैप जो मिसिंग था वो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का है। जो सेकेंड इम्पॉर्टेंट एलिमेंट है वो है कि हमारे पास जो साइज ऑफ फार्म्स हैं, जिस पर पहले बात हो चुकी है, मैं ज़्यादा उस पर तफसीली बात नहीं करूंगा। एक डेटा पॉइंट आपको और बता दूं कि 5 एकड़ एंड बिलो जो है वो 60% है। सो 88%, 90% जो है वो 12.5 से नीचे और 5 एकड़ से नीचे। और इसी से रिलेटेड एक और जो इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट है वो है डॉक्यूमेंटेशन का, कि वो तो है तो सही, लेकिन उसकी भी वो उनके नाम पे ट्रांसफर नहीं हुई, खाते नहीं है। देयर आर नंबर ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स विद देम। Then the third one is related to low productivity. Mechanization नहीं है because of small farmers हैं। अब उसकी बहुत सारी और reasons हैं, मैं इसमें भी नहीं पढ़ूंगा, but those are the reasons to be. That's another big problem to tackle. Low productivity की वजह से हमारे बैंकों को फाइनेंस करना मुश्किल हो जाता है। हमारे लिए हमारा इतना उनके पास मार्जिन नहीं होता कि वो हमसे फंडिंग ले सकें जहाँ उनको लेनी चाहिए। جو میرا بڑا فیوریٹ ہے وہ یہ ہے کہ ہمارا پراکسی ڈیٹا مسنگ ہے. باقی دنیا میں جس طرح میں نے کہا کہ وہ جس طرح ارلیئر میں نے کہا کہ وہ فاؤنٹین ہیڈ اینڈ پونڈ انالوجی ہے, اس طرح ہی یہ ایک کم از کم آلٹرنیٹ ڈیٹا پراکسی ڈیٹا اویلیبل ہوتا ہے تو آپ اس کو ایکسیس کر لیتے ہیں. انفارچونیٹلی ہمارے یہاں اس طرح پراکسی ڈیٹا اویلیبل نہیں ہے اور ایکسیسیبل نہیں ہے جو ہونا چاہیے, چاہے وہ ٹیلکو کا ہے یا پاور کا ہے یا ادروائز ہے. تو دیٹ از another problem to tackle. جو ناصر فرما رہے تھے بالکل صحیح, وہ ہمارا انفراسٹرکچر کا پرابلم ہے, دیٹ از آلسو لیکنگ. تو تھنگز لائک EWR can't be done. جو لینڈ اونرشپ ہے اس کی ایشوز جس طرح میں نے پہلے آپ سے کیا, بٹ جو سب سے بڑا پرابلم میرے خیال سے وہ کلچرل پرابلم ہے. وہ کلچرل پرابلم کیا ہے؟ وہ یہ ہے کہ ہم ایز اے سوسائٹی وی آر اے بروکن سوسائٹی. ہم جو ہے وہ ایک سے دوسرے آدمی کے ساتھ مل کے کام نہیں کرنا چاہتے, ہم ایک دوسرے سے بات نہیں کرنا چاہتے. ہاں یہ سید ہے تو میں نے جو ہے وہ ملک کے ساتھ کام نہیں کرنا, یہ ملک ہے تو میں نے کھوکر کے ساتھ کام نہیں کرنا, جس کی وجہ سے ہماری جو کوپریٹو فارمنگ ہے دیٹ از ناٹ پکنگ اپ. اگر آپ سکسیس سٹوریز دیکھیں گے چائنا اور انڈیا کی, تو وہ کوپریٹو فارمنگ کی وجہ سے ہیں, جس سے بہت سارے پرابلمس جو ہیں ہمارے آسان ہو سکتے ہیں. تو یہ ایک کلچرل پرابلم ہے, ایک سوسائٹل پرابلم ہے, اور ہم کولیبریشن میں بھی کام نہیں کرنا چاہتے. تو میں HBL کے ساتھ کام نہیں کرنا چاہتا بیکاز میرا کمپٹیشن ہے. بھائی اتنی بڑا راستہ کھلا ہوا ہے, وائی ڈو وی ہیو ٹو کمپیٹ ود ایچ ادر, وائی کانٹ وی ورک ٹوگیدر ایز, یہ اتنی امپورٹنٹ ایلیمنٹ ہے فار آر فیوچر گروتھ اینڈ کولیبریشن از دا اونلی وے ٹو گو. ہم نہ گورنمنٹ کے ساتھ کام کرنا چاہتے ہیں نہ پرائیویٹ سیکٹر کے ساتھ کام کرنا چاہتے ہیں. ہم ڈسمس کر دیتے ہیں فوراً اس بات کو کہ جی گورنمنٹ تو بالکل دور رہیں, جی گورنمنٹ سے کام کرنے کی ضرورت نہیں. میں اس پہ بالکل بلیو نہیں کرتا, اور ہم نے یہ پروف کیا ہے تھرو ڈوئنگ. اب یہ سارے جو پرابلم تھے اس میں جو 90% پرابلم ہے دیٹ ویو ٹرائی ٹو ایڈریس تھرو آفرنگ کسان کارڈ. کسان کارڈ از ٹرنڈ آؤٹ ٹو بی a roaring success, mashallah. And that only happened because it was done in collaboration with the government. جو میں collaboration کی بھی آپ سے بات کر رہا تھا, اور میں آپ کو بالکل اپنے دل پہ ہاتھ رکھ کے آج ہی بتا رہا ہوں, I'll be the happiest man کہ 2 سال کے بعد ناصر سلیم صاحب آئیں اور آ کے گورنمنٹ آف پنجاب کو اور سندھ گورنمنٹ کو یہ کہیں کہ جی کسان کارڈ آپ نے بینک آف پنجاب کے ساتھ کیوں کیا, ہم بھی یہ کرنا چاہتے ہیں. میرا تو یہ آبجیکٹو ہے, میں آپ کو بالکل سچی بات بتا رہا ہوں. اور جو ایکو سسٹم کی بات کر رہے تھے, جو ہماری بات کر رہے تھے ریئل اکانومی کی, وہ ریئل اکانومی میں ہم اس وقت تک نہیں جا سکتے جب تک یہ ایکو سسٹم ڈیولپ نہیں ہوگا. میرا اسٹیٹ بینک کے ساتھ بہت اس بات پہ آرگیومنٹ ہوتا ہے کہ آپ کو شروع میں سبسڈی دینی پڑے گی, آپ کو یہ جو پرائرٹی سیکٹرز ان کو سپورٹ کرنے کے لیے شروع میں کام کرنا پڑے گا, بٹ دین یو ہیو ٹو ڈیولپ دا پروسیس ان سچ اے وے کہ یو ول بی ایبل ٹو ہینڈ اٹ اوور ٹو دا پرائیویٹ سیکٹر ٹو ٹیک اٹ فارورڈ. جو کسان کارڈ ہے اس پہ میں قاسم ویری کوئکلی ذرا تھوڑا سا شیئر کر لوں. یہ آپ کے سامنے جو ہے یہ ڈیش بورڈ آ رہا ہے, بائی دا وے دس از اے آن لائن ڈیش بورڈ, یہ ہم نے اپنے پاس ڈیولپ کیا. میرے یہ فون پہ ہر وقت ہوتا ہے. یہ آپ کے سامنے تو اس وقت پکچر آ رہی ہے, اس کی فوٹو آ رہی ہے آج صبح کی, مگر یہ لائیو ہے, اور اس میں یہ پورا کا پورا پروسیس اینڈ ٹو اینڈ ڈیجیٹائز ہے, اسٹارٹنگ فرام اپلائنگ فار دا کارڈ and until the delivery. The Kisan has to come only once to the agriculture department to pick up his or her our card physically. By the way, uski jo PIN ki issuance hai, wo we are the only bank in Pakistan jo remote issuance of PIN bhi kar raha hai, wo bhi wahi ho jati hai. They don't even have to call or go to the branch or ATM to get their PIN activated. So ye end to end digitized process tha, because itne bade scale ke upar آپ اگر ڈیجیٹائز نہیں کریں گے تو تھنگس ول یو کانٹ ہینڈل دیٹ مینولی. سو اینڈ ٹو اینڈ ڈیجیٹائز. اور اس کے اندر ہم نے کیا ہے کہ وی ہیو میڈ اٹ کلوز لوپ. کلوز لوپ کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ جو اس کی اسپینڈنگ ہے وہ ریسٹرکٹیڈ ہے اونلی فار کوالٹی فرٹیلائزر, پیسٹیسائڈس اینڈ دا سیڈ. اور اس کی وجہ یہ ہے کہ جب تک کہ ہم ڈائریکشن میں نہیں لوگوں کو لے کے چلیں گے کہ وہ کوالٹی ان پٹ کی طرف جائیں, تو ییلڈ بھی بہتر نہیں ہوگی, پروڈکٹیوٹی بہتر نہیں ہوگی. سو وہ ہم نے کوئی تقریباً 3000 کے قریب مرچنٹس جو ہیں وہ اکراس پنجاب کو انلسٹ کیا ہے, اور یہ بڑھ رہا ہے نمبر فرام ویئر دا کسان کین گو. تو کسان اس پہ جا کے شادی نہیں کر سکتا اپنی, کسان اس پہ جا کے جو ہے وہ انفارچونیٹلی, اور وہ کسان جو ہے وہ وہاں جا کے ہوٹل میں اب کھانا نہیں کھا سکتا, اس کو یہ ان پٹ کے لیے ہی پیسے چاہیے ہوں گے, جو پاسٹ میں غالباً نہیں ہوا. پاسٹ میں کیش ملتا تھا آپ کو, اور آپ وہ واؤچر کا ایک اسکیم ہوا کرتی تھی, بٹ اٹ ہیز اٹس اون فلوز. تو ہم نے اس طرح کر کے اس کو اسٹرکچر کیا پورا, اینڈ the outcome is phenomenal. 533,000 farmers have been enlisted so far. They have approved 54 billion rupees کے loans approve ہو گئے ہیں, 34 billion disburse ہو گیا ہے, اور تقریباً 4.25 لاکھ کے قریب فارمرز جو ہیں انہوں نے کارڈ اپنے ایکٹیویٹ کرا لیے اور یوز کر رہے ہیں. اس کا بہت سبسٹینشیل امپیکٹ آیا ہے آن دا فائنینشیل انکلوژن. کو 60% لوگ وہ ہیں who are the first time borrowers. جو خواتین پہ بہت امپیکٹ آیا, 21,000 اس کے اندر فارمرز وہ ہیں جو خواتین ہیں, ان میں سے 75% وہ ہیں جو فرسٹ ٹائم بورورز ہیں, اور جو ان کی ایکریج ہے وہ 3.5 ایکڑ سے نیچے ہیں وہ خواتین جو اس کو یوز کر رہی ہیں. تو فینومینل امپیکٹ جو کاظم کہہ رہے تھے آن دا اسمال فارمرز تھرو دس پروسیس. اور اس کے اندر جو اب اگلا چیلنج ہمارے لیے ہے جس پہ ہم کام کر رہے ہیں, چیلنج تو نہیں ہے بٹ ہم اس کو بڑا ایک اسٹرکچر طریقے سے لے کے چل رہے ہیں گورنمنٹ آف پنجاب کے ساتھ مل کے. اب ہم نے فالو اپ یہ کرنا ہے دیٹ یو نو دا ریکوریز آر انشورڈ ایز ویل. So we are also following up. The government is also working with us to follow up on that. And then there is an inbuilt incentive. 6 months down the road, when you return the money back, you will be entitled for this once again. And by the way, کیونکہ پنجاب میں PLRA نے لینڈ جو ہے اس کو ڈیجیٹائز کر دیا, تو ہم لوگوں نے ڈیجیٹلی اس لینڈ کی سیل کے اوپر بھی بلاک لگا دیا. تو they can't sell the land either until unless they clear the funding from here. ایک ہم پہ بہت کرٹیسزم آتا ہے کہ جی آپ نے جو ہے وہ اس کی سسٹینیبلٹی کیسے انشور ہوگی. میں صرف یہ گزارش آپ سے کر دوں کہ سسٹینیبلٹی اس کی ایسے انشور ہوگی کہ اس کے اندر ہم ایک فی چارج کر رہے ہیں, اور وہ فی تقریباً کچھ 4-5% کے 5-6% کے آس پاس آتی ہے, تو سبسڈی کا اماؤنٹ کم ہو گیا. اینڈ ہمارا ارادہ یہ ہے, وہ 1,000 روپی پر ایکڑ ہے, ہمارا ارادہ یہ ہے کہ جس طرح لوگ اس سے یوز ٹو ہوں گے, we'll increase that fee from 1,000 rupees to 1,500 rupees, تاکہ یہ پورا کا پورا سبسڈی سے بھی نکل جائے. And then subsequently, once we have a good track record of recoveries, then there will be no first loss guarantee either. Thank you very much, Kazim.
Thank you very much, Zafar. That was great. I think up tak jitne the speakers who have touched upon various aspects of agriculture, they have focused on their areas. I think Dr. Zeelaf gave a broad overview. General Shahid Nazir se meri request hogi ke the work he's done at SIFC first and then now at the Green Pakistan initiative that he's leading, it is of a level of ambition, I think, that is at sort of a historic level in Pakistan's history in agriculture. And I think jo 60s or 70s mein jo kaam Pakistan mein agriculture mein hua, it became an example for the world. And that level of ambition in agriculture has not been seen until the work that General Shahid Nazir has led. And I think the amount of travel he's done in the rural area, I think, may not be matchable easily. So, General Sahab, thoda agar aap overall اگر ایک بیک گراؤنڈ بھی دیں کہ کس ڈائریکشن کی طرف جانا چاہ رہے تھے, and how far you are, and then we go to questions.
So thank you very much. I'll start from the very first sentence that Dr. Zeelaf said, that agriculture brought the humans out of the Stone Age. But business as usual has the potential to take us back to the Stone Age. And that is where the forums like this have the responsibility to create environments where the collaborations, the partnerships, and technology-driven agriculture is done in our country, not only on the large-scale farms, but also on the small-scale farms. At the same time, Yawar Sahab has talked about the livestock. I believe there cannot be any agriculture without livestock, because around the globe, as per the UN statistics, about 15 million hectare is turning into deserts. The phenomenon of desertification is there. So meaning thereby a country of the size of Pakistan with 79.6 million hectares will be done in just 5 years. And the population growth that we have, the first billion on this planet was in 1803, as per the UN statistics again. And we have taken till 2025, about 222 years to complete just 8 billion. The next is coming in about 8 years, meaning thereby the amount of food that we are required to produce in next about 20-25 years is going to be the equivalent to the food that the humans have produced in last about 8,000 years. So that is the significance of food security in the era in which we are living. And the people who are sitting under this roof, there cannot be better collection than the galaxy which is here. So I would just like to unfold what this Green Pakistan initiative is, how it is functioning, and what we have achieved so far, and what are the future ambitions, besides the challenges as highlighted by the moderator at the start. So ladies and gentlemen, Green Pakistan initiative is a large-scale mechanized farming and livestock initiative, where the strategy is very simple, that we want to develop land and enhance yield. We want to bring in the biodiversity, and putting this all together, we want to bring in the social impact on our society as a whole. There is a dilemma which is often talked of, the small scale farmer. So once we talk of the strategy is very simple, that we want to have the joint ventures through the foreign investors, domestic investors. Livestock is part and parcel of this initiative, and small scale farmer is the pivotal person in this complete scheme of things, because he is 95% of our total farmer community. We cannot leave him on one side and just focus on the large scale farms. Area, as you all are aware, I'm sure, which is under cultivation in Pakistan as of today is about 24.1 million hectares, means about 60 million acres. The new area that we are bringing into this project is just 4.8 million acres, less than 6% more areas coming into this project. So we have to focus on those 60 million acres which is already under cultivation, mostly by the small farmer, and that is where the financial institutions, the banks, the insurance, and then the industry, which have to have the hand-holding of the small farmer. If we speak of today, what is missing from our agricultural mosaic is the link of value addition. Today we are 32 million tons we have produced this year wheat, as against our requirement of 30 million tons, meaning thereby we are surplus. We are exporting rice, we are exporting maize, we are exporting textile commodities, we are exporting sesame, and we are exporting many more things. This year, we have exported for the first time in our history over $8 billion agro and food items to the world. But this contentment for the personal level, it's fine, but for the national level, it is killing. So we have to produce much more than what we are producing at the moment, because once we see the Pakistani lands, the Almighty has gifted us, are the best of the lands. The water which flows in our river systems is coming from the glacier, the sweetest of the water that we can think of. But the dilemma is we are producing the cheapest of the crops like wheat. We are not high cost, high value crops, we are not sowing, growing and harvesting. And that is where our farmer is not earning the due dividend that he is actually should be earning from that. So to do this, what has been done, we have got in JV agreements with the provincial governments. Punjab government has contributed about 811,000 acres of land. The Sindh government, as we speak today, has contributed about 52,000 acres of land. The survey is on for another million acre astride Nara Canal. But ladies and gentlemen, you will appreciate that all those lands which are under cultivation as of today are in the developed zones. The lands that I am handling are the barren, undeveloped and underdeveloped lands, but these are culturable wastelands which are available. Just to give you a statistic, this 4.8 million acres, if we convert this into square kilometers, this is about 18,200 square kilometers. And this area is larger than 42 countries of the world, if you go onto the worldometer. So meaning thereby in our country, more than 42 countries area is lying vacant. So it is our job to put that under cultivation. And now the question comes, the most essential commodity to cultivate this land is water. And we have the scarcity of water. But let's be very realistic. 1947, when Pakistan came into being, the amount of water which was flowing in our water system was 140 million acre feet. The water is the same. That was used by just 30 million people, and now it is being used by 250 million people, and going to be over 450 million people in another 20 years or so. So what needs to be done? We have to change the way we are using our water, hence the use of high efficiency irrigation systems. That is the pivotal thing that we have brought to this particular project. No investor is allowed to go for the traditional flood irrigation. He is to come with solutions like drip irrigations and subsurface irrigation systems, hose reel based irrigation systems, the central pivot system that we see around the globe. So if you visit now the Cholistan, you will find over 80 central pivots have been installed by the investors there. So the culture is coming in. So that is where our small farmer will also be educated. As it was highlighted by President Bank of Punjab, we have to get into that cooperative model. A 12-acre, 5-acre, 7-acre farmer cannot buy a central pivot system which is around 20 million rupees. But if 10 of them join hands together and the government join hands together, it gives them the initial financial support, installs that, and then get that money back in installment of couple of years, 3 years. So we have already placed this model on ground, where we have brought about 100 central pivot systems from Turkey, from China, from USA, from Spain, and now on installments, even we are giving those to our large scale farmers to bring that cultural change. And it was highlighted by Nassir Saab that what is lacking is the culture. So we are bringing that kind of cultural change. And beyond that, ladies and gentlemen, we have brought in a system of green agri malls, which will be around 250 in about 1 year time from now. As we speak today, about 25 are already functional. So this will be a one-stop solution from where people will be able to buy pesticides, fertilizers, seed, fuel. Because PSO is the hub, and around that we have our partners, about 20, where all major fertilizer companies of Pakistan or multinational companies of pesticide, seed companies, and then technology partners like HIT and logistic partners like NLC, they are there. So we are building the grain silos as well. As it was highlighted that the storage is another issue. So we have to address that. So the farmer, both large scale and small scale, should have the liberty to get the electronic warehouse receipt by depositing his grain and then enjoying the benefit of loaning from various commercial banks. And I would request the commercial banks, as I engaged with Pakistan Banking Association one day, they were very kind to visit us, and we just requested them to think on those lines, and I'm sure they are going to bring in certain products. The second thing, the new thing that we have brought is the concept of agri-service company. There will be agri-service companies based on the zones like potato zone, rice zone, cotton zone, and the zone where we have the multiple of crops. So the machinery will be specific to these crops. The government of Punjab is investing into this about 25 billion. Today we'll be finalizing that plan. And then this will be available on a rental model like Uber. It will not be the machinery that we will have from the company alone. People who own their tractors, those who own their various implements, they can also get registered. Meaning thereby, beyond their agriculture, beyond their cultivation, they will have a chance to earn little more from those implements which are lying vacant in their farmyards, the tractors and all other things. So this is, in a nutshell, we are doing. The last thing, we have put on the table a project of strategic canals on which a lot of debate is on these days. I'm sure you all are conversant with that. So there are 5 canals in total. Chashma Right Bank Canal for KPK. This will carry the share of KPK's water. Kachi Canal for Balochistan. This will carry the water of people of Balochistan as per their share of 1991 water apportionment record. Cholistan Canal and Greater Thal Canal for Punjab and Thar Canal for Sindh. It will carry the water of the respective provinces as per their share, and as we see and project into future, 2028-29, there will be 2 more dams coming up where we will have the storage capacity of about 10 million acre feet more, and the water will be distributed. If we don't do this now, we will have the same dilemma that the storage will increase, but we will not be having the means to carry that water to the farmlands, as we are facing the challenge in our power sector, where we have the electricity, but we don't have the transmission lines. And the second thing, we have a project of 100 dams in the province of Balochistan, and we are pushing and asking Balochistan government to speed up those dams, because it will have 2 great effects. One, it will save water, and second, it will mitigate the effects of floods, which actually are very detrimental to province of Sindh every year and alternate year, I believe. So these are a couple of things that we are doing, but in the end, I would just say, I believe future belongs to the nation, which will have grains, not the guns. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. General Saab, I think that quotable quote, I know some of the press is here, that's going to be a hit. I'm glad, General Saab, you talked so much about water. And there are a couple of data points I just want to place for your attention. One is that, absolutely right, that the same amount of water has been flowing through these rivers and being diverted through the canals. The Sakhar Barrage, we have a 100-year basis of data. Sakhar Barrage was completed 1933. So the data is from before that. And 1921 to now, the same amount of water is flowing. And there's a sort of misimpression that Pakistan is water scarce. What they do is they divide it by population every decade. And population is going up, but so per capita seems like, wow, we are losing water. But there is no farm of Pakistan where you go and see farmers worrying about water. They're flooding. So how do you explain that? Is because people are not drinking all that water. People means extra water consumption. 93% of our water is going to agriculture. We are wasting 30% of it, as General Saab said. And today, the other data point is 50% of the water being used on our farms is from the Indus Reservoir below the soil. So that's why, and the pumping for that's why farmers, when they come here to demonstrate, number one demand they have is the electricity tariff should go down. It's because they're pumping. So the water issue, and I think our attention from government should also focus on our irrigation system. Private sector cannot fix the irrigation system because 100% of it is with the public sector. And that's where I think a lot of attention needs to go to release some of the water that is needed in other areas. Now, I think that each of the speakers has outlined what problem they were solving and how they've gone about it. So let's do just collect a handful of questions, and then we'll see which speaker wants to respond for which one. So let's keep it very brief. Ji, please. Please, you could identify yourself.
Yeah, my name is Anis. I'm based out of Multan. I'm connected to agri with regards to cotton, mango, oranges at least. The summary that I understand from this wonderful panel is that we're talking about corporate farming, we're talking about use of technology, we're talking about insurance, and we're talking about, as Pakistanis, the responsibility that we all together need to do this. One of my questions to the panel would be that cotton is also a big pain point for all of us, and we talk about collaboration. So with HBL, I was the first one to start off with 1,000 acres of cotton growing, and right now we are doing about 30,000 acres, which are directly being sold to the brands in terms of a value-added product. But somehow I didn't hear much about cotton, because that is also building a load on our import bill continuously, which we have discussed yesterday as well. So is the panel thinking on those lines, or the coalition is doing that as well?
Thank you. So let's collect a few handful of questions and then we'll just run through the answers. Any other questions? Yeah, Khalid Saab, please.
General Saab, there are 4 farms in Cholistan, dairy farms that were built. One is at Mauchgarh, the other is at Babusar, Mirgarh, and Mutawali. What is being done with those farms? They were meant to be given to the milk processors for doing genetic interventions. Is something being done about those farms?
Thank you, Khalid Saab. So we have 20 minutes left, so let's do a couple more questions if there are any. Otherwise, we'll go back to the speakers. Going once, going twice. Okay, you're not a crowd that holds back, so if you're not picking up on this, then we can. General Saab, aap agar jawab dena chahiye, or any concluding remarks, and then we go to others.
Cotton is white gold of Pakistan. And in our history, the highest we have produced is 14.5 million bales in year 2015. 2023, we joined hands with Government of Punjab and Sindh, and we went from 5 million bales again to 10 million bales. The last year, we have gone down again to about 5 million bales. That is the reality on ground. But if you see what has hit us the most, last year, people carried out 3 sowings. The first sowing was post-wheat. The temperature was as high as 43 degrees Celsius. The germination level went down to 20%. They had to sow it again, and then they had to do it again once the monsoon came, and there were 51% more rains last year as compared to the yesteryears. So the answer lies, we have to resort to early sowing of cotton, on which we have already made a complete plan. Government of Punjab has pledged that they will ensure that they will go for 1 million acre early sowing of cotton in province of Punjab. Yesterday we had a conference which was co-hosted by Better Cotton and Pakistan Central Cotton Committee at Karachi. I was lucky to be part of that. Government of Sindh has pledged to cultivate cotton on about 650,000 acres as early cotton, post canola, raya, mustard. That is the time that they will do that. The third thing, Government of Balochistan has recently approved the organic cotton policy, and we will have the organic cotton as you are dealing with those brands, that is there. But this recession of cotton crop is not peculiar to Pakistan alone. Last year, China has lost 2.7 million bales as against their last year. So was the case with USA, Brazil, Turkey, Egypt. So this climate change is hitting us, and that is where we as a nation, we as a farmer community have to address this issue much more than what we were actually doing previously, because cotton is backbone of our economy. So the small answer to your questions are about those 4 farms. Those farms were built with a purpose that as and when there is a drought-like condition, once there is no fodder available in desert of Balochistan, the complete camel as well as the cows and all other herds, sheep and goats, they get collected to these facilities, and then government as a responsibility provides them with the fresh water, the drinking water. Once those water ponds get dried up, and then the fodder is transported there. What we are doing, sir, we are engaged with the livestock department of Government of Punjab, and we have requested them to put those farms also in this Green Pakistan initiative, where we will hand these farms over to the private investors with a pledge that as and when there is a situation of this kind, as per the responsibility and part of the agreement that we will sign with them, they will be responsible to feed those on a nominal cost, and the government will also chip in. So that is the mechanism on which we are working, because those 4 farms, as we speak today, are in a very, very bad shape, and we have to restore those farms. The intentions were very noble, but the execution was not as good as it should have been. So that is where we are working, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Kazim. Just wanted to enhance Anis's question. I think, Jen Saab, you mentioned on wheat that, it's a low value, and, if there was something else grown, we would have got better value, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go. When we specifically talk about cotton, one is, global warming and, how we need to shift the sowing patterns and keeping an eye out, because weather patterns are really changing how we do these things. But also, we should take a lens what competes with cotton and why is the farmer growing more cotton. And I think that's where, some industries we should also be looking at which particular products consume more water and what value do they bring. So I think if with your guidance in Green Pakistan, some level of priority can be done, and some of the competing industries should be looking at transforming to other materials which are less water intensive. They have a faster cycle, crop cycle, and most countries in the world use those alternates to produce refined and value-added products. So I think this misallocation of resources, priorities, is something which in the short term cannot be addressed. But if that framework and people start working towards something, I think it can align better on that point.
Thank you, Nassir. I think Dr. Zeelaf has some points to make.
Thank you, Kazim. So it has been an extremely enlightening, and there were so many specifics that all of us are going to be going home with. One, so there was talk about wheat, which is of course the most, the biggest issues are food insecurity and all that's related to climate change. But I'm not going to take the discussion there, but just give an example of currently from an acre of land, I believe 30 mounds of wheat is what the yield is, which if we just increase to 36, we will be able to actually start exporting rather than importing. And from what I've learned, there are progressive farms that are producing up to 45 months of wheat per day. So increasing yield is also the key to, so it's not just about let's do less of wheat, it's about let's increase the yield of wheat. And one of the main factors that, at least from what I've understood, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, so yes, in the 60s is when the Green Revolution was, and a lot of it had to do with technology, seed, fertilizer, and so now if we continue to have this, and it led to us becoming from a food insecure to a food secure nation. Yet, if the policies of the 70s and 80s are still continued today, I don't think it can solve the problems of today. So if we get to, even when we're talking about yield, seed may be a huge factor. So how do we even look into what can we be doing different there?
Yes.
So, and export, if there's any key takeaway from these 2 days, it's export is the way to go for Pakistan's economy. Even a company like ours, who, yes, one of the largest buyers of wheat, egg, sugar, all of that, focused domestically, largest food FMCG here, but over the past 5 years, increasing exports, looking outwardly. We have targets of like $50 million by 2030. So what are the things that we are looking at, or we could be doing, is exactly to have these enabling factors which we have been speaking about. So I think it is the public, private initiatives that we speak about, and giving the enabling environment to all these amazing corporates and financial sectors and entrepreneurs to make this happen. And we are there to convert this into what all of us, Pakistan, needs and makes.
So as your friendly timekeeper, folks, we need to be in the dining area by 1, which means agriculture has to give 5 minutes to the administrative authorities. So let's do a minute each. Any parting thoughts, any conclusions, please?
So Zeelaf ने सारा thunder मेरा steal कर लिया. मैं भी PPP की बात करना चाहता था. It's all about collaboration and collaboration. उसके अलावा नहीं हो सकता. प्लीज ये मत समझें कि प्राइवेट सेक्टर कर लेगा, प्लीज मत समझें कि सिर्फ पब्लिक सेक्टर कर लेगा, और ये भी मत समझें कि सिविल सोसाइटी फार्मर खुद कर लेगा. सबको मिलकर काम करना पड़ेगा. एक मैं खुशखबरी जरा अपनी तरह इतना ही दे दूं आप लोगों को. एक तो ये कि जिस तरह किसान कार्ड एक बहुत बड़ी सक्सेस थी, उस तरह ही हमने लाइफ स्टॉक कार्ड भी, यावर साहब चले गए, ये लाइफ स्टॉक कार्ड भी कर दिया है, जिसमें 16,000 फार्मर्स और 1 लाख एनुअल फर्स्ट फेज में आए हैं, और ये 1.5 लाख हो जाएंगे. एंड वी आर अगेन, इट्स अ क्लोज लूप कार्ड, जहां पर उनको क्वालिटी फॉर्डर मिलेगा. 3 चीजें जो जनरल साहब ने फरमाई थी, मैं उसके ऊपर भी लोगों को एक खुशखबरी दे दूं. जनरल साहब के साथ मिलके हमने कॉर्पोरेट फार्मिंग का एक टेम्पलेट बनाया है, सो दैट और फिर वो हम अब बैंकों को टैप करने की कोशिश करेंगे उसमें, कि ताकि उसमें एक कॉर्पोरेट फार्मिंग की तरफ बैंक्स भी चलना शुरू करें, क्योंकि अभी जो है वो फंडिंग उसके अंदर जरा थोड़ा सा लैकिंग है. तो उसके लिए बड़ा जरूरी था कि एक टेम्पलेट बन जाता. वी फॉर्म दैट टेम्पलेट एंड वी शेयर्ड इट थ्रू PPA टू ऑल द बैंक्स. Habib Bank and ourselves worked on it. The other one we are working closely with PSE is the warehouse receipt. जनरल साहब, आपको बड़ी खुशी होगी सुन के कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब से हमने इनिशियल इस पे ओके ले लिया है, और हबीब बैंक एंड ourselves are again working on this one. इसमें ज़ीलफ वो जो आप बात करी थी 50,000 रुपए, 50 मिलियन तक जो है वो स्मॉल फार्मर को हम EWR के थ्रू, स्पेशली ऑन द, कोशिश हमारी ये कि फॉर द वीट के लिए हम उनको जरूर टैप करें. ये उनके लिए बड़ा जरूरी है. विद दिस होल सपोर्ट सिस्टम व्हिच वाज देयर no longer being there, this kind of initiatives are necessary. Kazim is spearheading it, but Nassir and myself are supporting him on that one. आखिरी जो मैकेनाइजेशन पे बात हो रही थी जनरल साहब, वो अगेन जो आपका इनिशिएटिव है मैकेनाइजेशन वाला, उस पर भी हमारी गवर्नमेंट ऑफ पंजाब से मीटिंग हो गई है, एंड वी आर नाउ गोइंग फॉर मशीनरी की लीज के लिए फॉर द फार्मर्स अगेन. सो पर फार्मर 100 मिलियन रुपए की लीज जो है वो हम मशीनरी जो है उसमें उनको अलाउ करेंगे, और दे कैन गो एंड गेट दैट लीज. उसका पूरा मैकेनिज्म हमने इन प्लेस कर दिया, एंड वील टेक इट ऑन फ्रॉम देयर. थैंक यू कासिम.
Abrar साहब, please go ahead. I think we may not have time. We have just a couple of minutes left. So
very quickly.
So afterwards.
So of course, yes. I think the key message is to export, but I think in agriculture, one of the key things to consider is import substitution as well, right? Because it has to be a joint working of both of this particular aspect. दूसरी ज़ीलफ ने बात की yield increase की, wheat के example दे रहे थे, मैंने भी tomato के जब आपको example दिया तो मैंने बताया ये very much possible है. But today, you know, to improve these yields, you require a lot of technology. I had the pleasure of actually listening to General Saab जब ये Saudi Investor Conference इसी होटल में हुआ था, and he gave this absolutely wonderful presentation. It was followed by, it was a full multimedia with videos and everything, and seeing is believing actually, because he actually presented proof in terms of the mega structures that they've actually built and the kind of hard work that they've done. कहने का मकसद ये है कि ये टेक्नोलॉजी जो है ना, टेक्नोलॉजी के बगैर आपकी yields improve नहीं होंगी. So जिसके अंदर obviously seed की कारकर्दगी भी आ जाती है, but at the same time the whole aspect of using of water, I think he touched upon that factor, and that's why I'm repeating that. Water plays a very critical aspect of making sure that the yields improve. If you flood irrigate it, then you damage the crop and you're susceptible to not meeting standards because of microbial contaminations as well. So just a illustrative point.
Thank you so much. Any last thoughts? I think only
Well, I think a lot has been spoken and there's not much time left. So I think it just sort of summarizes as it's an ecosystem play. I think everybody's talked about the collaboration element. The insurance sector has a lot of ideas, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of expertise that is available. Ask, and I'm sure there's a solution we can collaboratively find. So I'm sure this is something we can do together.
I think very quickly, Kazim, banks have to step out of their traditional roles. Two different things that HPL has done. One is HPL Zarai Services and the DERA concept. So you bring in the seed, fertilizer, it's basically a one-stop. Financing, mechanized, agronomist support, soil testing. We're now looking to even add healthcare into it as well, and have some visiting healthcare. So our interventions at the village level need to be very, very granular. It has to be non-traditional. The second, I think there were some comments around it. We have an HPL asset management. We've basically piloted successfully a livestock fund with very good returns. And now we're looking to finalize that as a product and roll that out as well. So Zarai, I've just said that it's basically all what we've talked about in agri, nothing to do with banking, other than the financing leg. We need to be there. And I think that's how we move it forward. The other one is partnering, collaborating on the larger corporate farming pieces where we will continue to engage and move that agenda forward.
Right.
So these are the things collectively. Rome wasn't built in a day, but these kind of discussions, as General Saab said, they set the stage, there's feedback from everybody. Let's make this successful. This is one of those sessions and one of those initiatives which can really, really make a difference to Pakistan. Thank you.
So if you found this panel of corporate players as well as government institutions talking about agri-investment, if you've liked this, we are doing from Pakistan Agriculture Coalition, which is the institution I'm with, we are doing a 2-day version of this in Karachi, February 12 and 13, and we invite all of you to attend, please.